What's going on, bros? Welcome to our friends on the YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Hit that follow button. Make sure to hit the bell. Bro fist.
Hey everyone, welcome to the first actual real video I'm making specifically for this channel. I figured I'd talk about something that's really close to me, and that's albums. I love albums. I think they're the best music format you can listen to when you're actually trying to find new music, especially if they just come out. I know that's not everyone's preferred thing, but I just love albums. And combine that with this new streaming world that we've been in for at least a decade now at this point. And you have artists that actually go back and retroactively add or fix albums that they've already put out. So we're going to look at two different albums and see how adding a song retroactively can fix it or even enhance some of the feelings of it, and sometimes where it just kind of messes up the entire storytelling and structure of the album. And these two albums are actually 2022's and 2021's album of the year for me. And the first one we're going to start off with is Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. And I know he's pretty big in news as of late. I loved his most recent album, GNX, but I think Mr. Morale is slightly better than it. I just think it has a really cool track list and a cool story to it as well. Especially for longtime Kendrick fans like myself, this album is very, very interesting. The way Kendrick lines up this album's storyline is that he starts off the album starting as this kind of braggadocious, machismo man who doesn't really need to grieve or have any kind of like long-term trauma or to really address it at all. And you can see that in some of the lyrics and some of the theming. He's not really the nicest person on the front half of it. That's the Big Steppers side of it. And then it ends with Mr. Morale on the second disc. So it's a double album. I think this album is really interesting because it's kind of a interesting therapeutic session for Kendrick that doesn't really happen until the second half of the album, where he actually talks to a therapist and kind of addresses a lot of the emotional trauma and, you know, generational curses, as he says on this album. And it's a really interesting dive into his narrative, into the savior complex that he's had for several albums at this point, you know, all the way back to like 2011, 2012. It's time that he finally addressed this after a whole decade of him doing this, and I think it's really interesting how he went back and did it, and the track listing is the main reason why I wanted to look at this. So if you look at it, you see disc 1 is up here, and you know, you've got United in Grief, N95, Worldwide Steppers, you know, the main start of the album. If you scroll down a little bit more, you've got disc 2, which is where he begins the actual process of going to therapy, having some self-reflection, and you've got all these great tracks. I love this album. I think it's slightly better than GNX because of the plot and the really interesting storytelling that benefits a lot of the hardcore Kendrick fans that have been listening for a long time and then wanted him to really address some of this. But the main reason why this track list is really cool is that it's a mirror of itself, which is another deep layer that I don't think a lot of people really know about. So it really is like, if you put a mirror in between the two discs, every track kind of bounces off of each other. You've got Purple Hearts and Count Me Out that are all basically the same style. You've got Rich Interlude at 6, and then you have Savior Interlude at 4. So it's, you know, right after each other you got these two interludes. This first one, I believe, has Kodak Black, and then this one has Baby Keem. So Kodak obviously is a controversial character, someone who has a lot of, you know, character issues, we'll say. You can definitely go look those up, but that's someone that Kendrick could have been if he wasn't, you know, trying to be a little bit more self-reflective and have a bit more of, you know, a good spirit about things. And Baby Keem, he sees himself as who he really is. You know, obviously that's his cousin. That's someone that he brought up to be a good rapper. Obviously he's now much bigger because he got the Kendrick cosign, and, you know, they have the whole Hillbillies thing, whatever. But each track, so number 7 you have Mr. Morale, and then number 3 you have Worldwide Steppers. N95 was like this big banger off of the album. That's probably the biggest song on it. And then you have Mother I Sober, which is like the most sad, downtrodden, self-reflective song on the entire thing. And then you have the track Mirror, which is, you know, it kind of explains the whole flipping of the track list. And it's something that in Kendrick's creative storytelling, I think whenever he makes this kind of point on a track list, it's really, really interesting. A track listing on a Kendrick album is also very important just because that's how he has presented himself artistically, going back to 2012 on Good Kid, Mad City, or, you know, To Pimp a Butterfly, or even on Damn. There is an interesting way of telling a story thematically, whether it's on, you know, T-Pab, where he adds a line to a poem as the track gets going, and then the entire length of the poem at the very end reveals what he's been trying to tell you the entire time. Or, you know, on Good Kid, Mad City, where it's like a story where you get, you know, one little bit of many different branches of the story. Even on this, I think is very interesting because, you know, you've got this whole reflective side of him because he is, again, reflecting on himself. He sees the person that he was before, then looking through the mirror, he sees how he has changed to become a better man, a better father, a better figure in the rap scene. And I think that's very interesting. But he kind of changed that with this last track that's on here, The Heart Part 5, which was a teaser, if you remember, that he added before this album came out. He's been doing this Heart Part 5 series since, you know, way beyond. He even added a track called The Heart onto GNX. And I think it kind of messes with the entire point of this album. I don't think he necessarily had to put it on the album, even though it has 100 million streams. It's a pretty big track, and if you remember, it had that very popular music video on it where he had the AI changing his face to become these controversial black artists or actors or whatever they were. And I think it was a very interesting song. It's a great music video as well. It definitely has artistic merit and deserves some kind of recognition. But to put it on the album, I feel like kind of retroactively ruins the whole point of it. He even calls it Disc 3, kind of acknowledging that it's not really a part of the main story. It's just kind of tagged on at the end. And I think that's kind of retroactively ruining the track list and the artistic vision of this album. Is it really ruining the album for me? Not at all. I think it's like a great album. I think most people should listen to it if you're a bit of a Kendrick fan, but you haven't really done a deep dive on some of the newer stuff, or if you've just really heard the singles. I think it is a great view as to explain why he has this mindset, the way that he has had this meteoric rise, and how he's still at the top. Just goes to show you how generational of an artist he is, and the fact that adding this song, no one really cares, but I just thought it was interesting to go back and look at that because the track listing has been so important for him for so long. Just to add that at the very end seems kind of weird. I think he could have left it as a single and it would have been fine. I love the track. I think it's a great track, but listening to the album in full, it's just kind of jarring to throw it in there and ruins the whole point of the track list. Now, an album I think did this very well is the album that I also put as my number one album of 2021, which was An Evening with Silk Sonic by Silk Sonic, aka Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak. This was a bit more of a looser theme to it. I don't even know if many artists or many listeners really know the theming of this album. Obviously, two pretty great artists that are a bit known more for their pop and R&B sounds come together and fuse to create a bit more of a throwback, like 70s style soul album, which again is fantastic, and I love the theming of it. But it has a bit more of an interesting storytelling arc to it. I don't think it's more interesting than Kendrick's, obviously, because that's a bit more of a personal, self-reflective, larger thematic feel to it. But this one obviously is smaller. It's only about 20 to 30 minutes of length, but just filled with bangers, and I think the way it added a song to it retroactively is pretty interesting. So yeah, the way that this album went back and added a song to it is pretty good. Also, because it's only 30-ish minutes, the fact that they added a song, it kind of stretches out the runtime a little bit longer. I think Kendrick's was about 45 to 50 minutes. I don't think he really needed to add that song to it, but still, I think it's okay. This is only 10 songs too. So the track that they added retroactively, I don't think people even know about. I mean, obviously, it's streamed a fair bit. It's the track Love Train, which is a cover, by the way. It's not even an original song, but they put it out the year after for, I believe, Valentine's Day, because it's obviously a bit more of a lovey song. So the album begins by doing the intro, done by, I believe, Bootsy Collins, and he goes and actually introduces the band, and then it starts with the track Leave the Door Open as the actual song. Obviously, the huge hit off of this. I think sets the stage for, it's a bit more of a love story. It's them obviously talking about how this person in their life doesn't necessarily know if they want to be with them, but they're going to leave the door open for more of a relationship in the future if that actually happens, but they're not actually shutting this person off completely. And then they kind of need some way to get back up. The track Fly As Me comes on. I'm not a huge fan of that track, but it's an interesting look into seeing, you know, you kind of need to get your swagger up a little bit to get back into the relationship scene. After Last Night was kind of the reflective, like, oh, you met someone new, you hooked up with them, and now you're getting into a whole new relationship. You got Smoking Out the Window, where they're kind of getting into the weeds of it a little bit. Maybe it is the same person. I'm not entirely sure if that is the case. We did a whole podcast on this if you want to actually get my full deep thoughts on it. Put On a Smile is them kind of breaking it off more officially because he's a bit sadder, but he's going to make a brave face about it. 777 is them kind of getting with their friends, going to Vegas, and just kind of throwing all caution to the wind. You know, oh, you broke up with this girl, but, you know, let's get your mind off of that kind of thing. And then Skate is where it gets a little weird with the story. You know, just skate with them and slide your way on over. I don't know if it's fully thematic at this point. Again, I'd like to reiterate that Kendrick's storyline and storytelling in his much more thematic and interesting, which is why adding the Heart Part 5 was kind of weird to me. But Love Train at least makes more sense because it's a bit more of a romantic relationship-based song, and it feels like it is a whole evening with Silk Sonic. That's kind of the whole point of this, is that it makes it feel like it is an actual night going out with some friends. Like, oh, you have relationship issues, but, you know, you're going to fly out with your friends, you slept with a girl, you're gonna get back together, maybe not, it gets a little messy, but you're gonna go out, have some fun. And then it ends with the track Blast Off, where I think they just kind of, you know, get high or drunk and then just kind of have some kind of drug-themed, you know, night where you just sleep it all off. So I think it is an interesting story, maybe not the tightest storyline about the whole thing, but adding Love Train, which is the whole point of this, is classy enough where it doesn't ruin the whole theming or the storyline, but the way they went about it was very good. And again, it's only 36 minutes and change, so adding it doesn't make it feel super long or stretched out. So yeah, that's how I think adding a song retroactively either makes or breaks an album's theming, depending on how you go about it. There is one more example that I wanted to bring up, and that is the album The Forever Story, which is the album from JID that came out 2 years ago, or 3 years ago actually at this point. This is the quote-unquote extended version. So what happened is, this is the regular album, everything is exactly the same as how he put it out, but there is one extra added song at the very end called 2007. I believe he wanted to put this out on the album originally, but just couldn't get the rights for it. And he actually went back retroactively, took down the original Forever Story album, put this one up, called it the extended version, and then just added a song to it. I don't think this is necessarily a good or a bad thing because, again, it's called the extended version, but there's not really a regular version to find. And there's just an added song, which is a good song. I really do like 2007. I just thought that was something that I could bring up pretty quickly and, you know, just at least mention it. But yeah, it's going to do it. Let me know if you guys have any other examples of people going back and retroactively adding a song or adding a few other songs. And I'm not just saying like a deluxe version. That's a kind of a whole different beast of just someone adding a whole new album on top of their old album to get more streaming revenue, because that's a whole other racket in and of itself. I'm talking about specifically adding one or two tracks, or even going back and changing the mix like I mentioned before. And how that really affected the album, because I'm really only aware of those 2 or 3 examples. So if you know any other examples, go ahead and add them down in the comments. And thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any other topics you want me to talk about. I am trying to get back into making videos now that TikTok is being banned, and obviously this is a bit harder to really get a grasp of. But if you guys liked it, make sure to drop a like, make sure to drop a sub. I'm going to go to the gym after this, so I will catch you later. Thanks, guys.